If you're not a Mercedes fan, you might be frustrated with how many news stories and videos are still made about the team, despite them not being the quickest team in 2022, and by some margin. We have a newly crowned world champion in Max Verstappen, who is in the fight to defend his title, and a resurgent Ferrari in their first serious title challenge in a decade. Despite all of this, it feels like there is so much content about Mercedes. But is this really true? Well, in this video I set out to answer that question and provide some explanation as to why. So let's start out by finding if it's true and there is in fact more content written about Mercedes than the other teams. In my extremely not extensive research of the latest 60 news stories from Sky F1, the BBC and motorsport.com, I found that Mercedes news stories dominates the headlines. A whopping 31% of the news stories were about the Mercedes Formula 1 team. The next most talked about team is Red Bull, with 13% of the news articles, which is understandable as they are leading both championships and Max won the most recent race in Montreal. Alpine and AlphaTauri received a, perhaps unexpectedly, high amount of news stories following the Canadian Grand Prix, but this can be attributed to Alpine's front row in qualifying and AlphaTauri announcing their driver Pierre Gasly is going to stay at the team in 2023. But this doesn't explain why Mercedes still receives so much media attention. Before I move on, it is important to note I am of course looking at English speaking websites. If I were to look at an Italian motorsport news website for example, Ferrari will always dominate the headlines there. So why is there still so much interest in Mercedes then? The first and most obvious reason is they have dominated the recent history of the sport, winning the last 8 Constructors' Championships from 2014 to 2021 and 8 Drivers' Championships. 7 of the last 8 Drivers' Championships from 2014 to 2020. Yep, okay, I've still not processed Abu Dhabi 2021 yet. Since the start of the 2014 season, the beginning of the turbo hybrid era, Mercedes have won a ridiculous 65.7% of the races. That's 111 wins out of 169. And that is including the 9 races so far in 2022, where they are yet to win. Their win rate jumps up to 69.4% if you don't include the 2022 season. Despite at times this season Mercedes being up to 1 second off the pace, which is huge by F1 standards, people still expect them to turn it around at any moment, as they have a history of recovering extremely well from adversity. Another factor is their long-time driver Lewis Hamilton, who is statistically the biggest star in F1, and that's understandable. Lewis has been at the top of motorsport for 15 years. If we compare the Instagram followings of the entire grid, we see that Lewis is miles ahead of the rest when it comes to followers. Lewis has a mighty 28.7 million followers. The next most popular driver is Max Verstappen on 8.8 million, and that's less than a third of the followers of Lewis. But Max is still young, at only 24 years old. He still has many more years left in his career, another 15 years or more if he wants, and he's already been in Formula 1 for 7 years, which is crazy to think. And while right now drivers like Max, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris and George Russell, to name a few, don't yet have followings that are the size of Lewis Hamilton's, once they start to pick up more wins and world championships, their followings will likely grow too. And being in an era where social media is so popular, I feel it's only a matter of time before their followings begin to catch up. 2 other drivers who have had a good amount of success and longevity in the sport are Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel. Fernando is on 4.4 million followers, and Seb, an outlier on the grid, does not have any social media profiles at all. I'm sure Seb, who has been in Formula 1 a similar amount of time as Lewis and won 4 world championships, would have a large following too. He's been extremely marketable over the years and speaks multiple languages. But Lewis has tremendous reach outside of Formula 1 and motorsport, perhaps more than any other driver, with many friends who are top athletes, musicians, in the fashion industry and many more. The teams have their own Instagram accounts, and if we compare their follower numbers, we see that Mercedes are joint top with McLaren on 9.6 million followers. They are closely followed by Ferrari and Red Bull on 9.4 and 8.6 million followers respectively. The rest of the teams are a little way behind on between 2.5 million and 1.9 million followers. But what can we learn from all of this? In summary, this increased level of interest in Mercedes is likely to continue for a few more seasons, even if they aren't challenging for championships. Once Lewis Hamilton retires, and if Mercedes can't return to winning ways, then this increased media attention in Mercedes is likely to die down. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Are too many news articles written about Mercedes? Do we not hear enough about the smaller teams? If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Why don't you check out my video on my top 10 F1 YouTube channels? You might find your new favourite F1 channel, or you could share one of your favourites that I didn't mention. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.